Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Cup of Joy. I'm your host, Ariana Joy Christie, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a space to inspire, to learn, to grow, and to challenge. Get ready to fill your cup and spread a little joy along the way. Okay, Dr. Robyne Hanley-Dafoe, resiliency scholar, multi-award winning author, and podcast host. Welcome to Your Cup of Joy.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so happy to have you. And I'm very interested in this. So, resiliency is your thing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. What does resiliency scholar mean? And
Yeah.
also, why resiliency?
Yeah, I love the question. And so I have been studying human resiliency and performance for almost 20 years. I've been teaching at the university. And one of the things that I recognized very early as I am someone who did not have a linear path through school. I
Okay.
actually dropped out in high school. I navigated a lot of really challenging seasons. And when I got back into school, one of the things that I noticed was how the world was talking about resiliency wasn't exactly what my experience with resiliency was like and what
Hmm.
it was about. So I very much kind of set out to do a wee bit of a kind of a reckoning with this is so much more than just grit and mindset. Like there were all these other dimensions. So essentially that's what I've been working on for the last 20 years is helping to bring resiliency into a place where people can see it as something that's useful and also something that we can cultivate, we can foster for ourselves, for our kiddos, for our families, for our communities.
Totally. And so I think when people think about resiliency, like you're saying, we often think like, oh, it's being tough, it's
Yeah.
being like sometimes transformative. I feel for you, what does resiliency really actually mean?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. So for resiliency in how I see it and how we use it in my work and how we write about it, it's not just about bouncing back. It's
Mm.
about recognizing how we navigate hard parts in our life. So there's this notion that when we bounce back, we kind of go back to where we once were,
Mhm.
where so often we navigate hard parts of our lives and we're remarkably different afterwards. And we sometimes get on new trajectories. We get new experiences. We sometimes use those setbacks and they become a set up for a big future that we
Mhm.
maybe never saw coming. So when we talk about resiliency, we've actually identified, Ariana, that there's 5 areas that help to build a foundation. And if we're able to have this underneath kind of how we build our lives, we see that people tend to weather any part of their lives just a wee bit easier.
So interesting to me because I often reflect back on my life and think, okay, there were hard times when I was a kid, there were hard
Yeah.
times as an adult, and then there's also motherhood, which I look at as completely a whole other thing. And you're
Oh,
right.
yeah,
As I've gone through all of those seasons, they've all been hard in their own ways, but I have changed as a human being through all of them.
exactly. Yeah,
And I sometimes look back, especially in my younger life, and think like if I didn't go through those things, I there's no chance I would be who I am today.
100%.
So I look at it as a positive, but I think a lot of people who don't maybe go to therapy or have
Yeah.
these times to reflect and think back on the things they've been through don't maybe see it in that way. So how
You're
can we change that and flip
yeah.
that narrative?
Yeah, you're 100% right. There's this kind of notion about some of us will figure out how to adapt, right? So it doesn't mean we
Mm.
have to like what we're going through. It doesn't mean we approve of what we're going through, but we figure it out. We adapt, we adjust, we course correct, whatever that looks like. And then there's going to be a population of persons that get stuck. And they very much will kind of revisit those seasons, those people, those villains. They'll just kind of keep going back to it and they can't
Yeah,
seem to find their way out of it. And what's quite interesting is I don't think anyone can make it through life without being like a villain in someone's story, right?
of
We
course.
that's just part of it. And again, it's that narrative where people tend to get stuck.
Mm.
And one of the things that we focus on in the work that I do is figuring out what does it take to help somebody be able to process what they've gone through because we hold space because let's like the hard stuff is hard, right? And some of
Totally.
it, it's awful and it sucks. And a lot of times we didn't even sign up for it. It's things that have happened to us. And what we figure out is what's it going to take? What will your day, for example, look like to be able to get to the other side of it? So that way we don't have to be defined by the worst season of our life. It just becomes
Mhm.
part of our story. It's not the whole story.
I love that. And I want to note that that is hard work to
Oh,
do
it's all the
because,
work.
yeah,
Yes.
a lot of the time, like, yeah, it took me a long time in
Yeah.
all of those seasons, like all of the things that have happened to really be like, okay, how can I move past this and make this not something that consumes me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's sometimes we refer to this as like the work before the work, right?
Yeah.
So we have this tendency of we kind of repeat what we don't repair. So
Mm.
when people say like, "Hey, Robyne, should I go to therapy? Like, should I do this?" My question I often ask them is like, "How have you noticed things are going?" Right? Have you noticed you are kind of stuck in the same type of relationship or the same type of situations at work or the same kind of battles with your kiddos? Like, have you noticed there's this repetition? Because that's really useful data to suggest there's some work to do. And it
Mm.
doesn't mean we're broken. It doesn't mean we're weak. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. It means that life has unfolded in a particular way where we may or may not be resourced to navigate what's ahead. And what we want to make sure is people find ways to figuring out how can they stay well resourced, whatever that looks like for them, so that way they can live big, bold, healthy lives that are in alignment with their potential.
I love that so much. Okay, I want to talk about your new book coming out because it's coming out
Yeah.
in 2026 next
Yeah.
year, and it's called I Hope So.
Mhm.
Um, it explores hope and something that we can choose.
Yeah.
So even when it's hard. And so when we're talking about this resiliency and going through hard things and kind of finding the positive in that, I think a lot of that is hope because, like you
Yeah.
said, the work before the work
Yeah.
is sometimes the hardest part. Like just getting there and seeing that there is an end to it, there is something good on the other side.
Yeah.
So, what inspired you to explore hope in this way when you had been studying so much resiliency?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I love the line of questioning. So the first book that came out and talked about the 5 pillars of resiliency. So the 5 pillars that we talk about in that piece of work, it talks about a sense of belonging. We have to have a home
Mm,
team. We need sisterhood. We need connection. We need people. Like our
yeah.
home team is such an advantage for us to be able to show up in the hard parts of our lives, right? So belonging is key. We talk
Hmm.
about perspective, which is often referred to like mindset, but also trusting our intuition,
Hmm.
especially as women. We spend a lot of time like blocking out our intuition.
Yeah,
And I think we get into that all of a sudden into our 40s and then we like start to find it again. But
totally.
the reality is our intuition, our perspective is key. We talk about acceptance, hope, and actually humor. So those were the 5 pillars.
Mm,
So I kind of went out in the world and was, working with groups all around the world around those 5 pillars. And then the next iteration of the work, the book came out around stressing wisely, which I identified that for people to be truly resilient, we actually know that their like baseline for wellness was deeply correlated. So there was a big
mm,
relationship there. So we did that body of work for a wee while. And then what kept coming back time and time again was the thread of hope.
mm,
That when it came to resiliency, when it came to well being, when it came to being able to show up in every season in our lives, the people had a hope practice. They were able to live hope filled even when it was hard.
mm,
So we were able to, and my team and I were able to like kind of shift the focus that we still see that resiliency and well being are deeply rooted in hope. But hope is a wee bit of a, I think, a lost concept.
yeah.
And even for example, like I remember, I have 3 teenagers, like my 2 oldest are in university, and then my youngest is in his last year of high school. And he happens to be a pretty talented little baller. And the amount of times I have heard people say to my kids, like, don't get your hopes up. Right. Like, oh,
Oh,
you want to play in the NBA? Like, dude, there's not a lot of Canadians playing in the NBA. Don't get your hopes up. Thankfully, Jax has learned to turn around and say, well, there's actually 51 males and females playing in the NCAA tournament. Like, right. So, like, the kids are well equipped with, like, don't you dare dash my hopes.
yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean everyone's trajectory is going to be that they're going to be playing professional sports. But I realized as a mom that I had really kind of created these environments where I wanted their hope to stay intact.
Yeah.
And then I realized that we need to talk about this more. And I wanted other families, other community peoples like to be able to get their hopes up again, because that was actually the biggest predictor of whether or not somebody was able to navigate something hard.
So interesting to me because you're right. Like, if you don't set the goal, if you don't think that it's realistic, then it's not. If you never think that you're going to do it, obviously you're never going to. I
Yeah.
was talking to a friend last night. I play in a soccer league on Tuesdays. So I
Nice.
was playing last night and I was talking to a friend and I was like, I'm in my like delusional era. Like,
I
I
love
just
this.
don't take no as an answer. I
Yeah.
literally think that the craziest things could happen because why
Yeah.
could they not?
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
And
Yes.
so it's kind of like, I said delusional, but then I was like, no, it's not delusional. It's
Yeah.
because if you put your mind to something, you can make it happen.
A
And I think
100%.
I've never thought of that as hope. I've just thought
Yeah.
of that as like, manifestation is trendy right
Yeah.
now. People are saying like, just think of the things that are going to happen and then make them
Yeah.
happen. But I think now I'm realizing that is hope.
It is
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I would say you're in your hope-filled era
Yeah.
when you realize you have high levels of agency, which means I can figure stuff out. Like, I will
Yeah.
figure it out. It doesn't make sense yet, or perhaps, like, my life doesn't have, like, a job description that you'll see on Indeed or on LinkedIn, but
Yeah.
I'm able to craft a livelihood and a lifestyle that might not really exist yet, but I'm gonna figure it out, right? So
Totally.
that is hope-filled living at it like, that's a perfect example.
I love that. It just like totally clicked for me. You also describe hope as a practical skill rather than a
Yeah,
feeling. And I think as I'm having this realization, that is partly that. But can you explain maybe what that really means, especially for parents like
yeah,
navigating through hard seasons?
yeah.
What is hope as a practical skill?
Yeah. So again, it's this idea that I think one of the kind of places where we get stuck a wee bit on this is thinking about hope and optimism interchangeably. And
Mm,
they're not the same thing. Being optimistic is very much attached to an outcome. Right. So it's that
okay.
little one saying, I want to make the soccer team. Right. And like being like, I want to make the soccer team. The outcome in an optimistic way is I'm going to make the soccer team. Being hope filled is I love to play soccer and I'm going to play soccer somehow, some way, somewhere. I'm going to make this work somehow. So you are rigid in terms of what your kind of intention is, but
Mm,
you're really flexible about how you make it happen. And again, it's not that we don't want to have positive outcomes. It's just that the outcome doesn't have to be so prescribed. Like we're
mm,
open to seeing possibility. And as you know, possibility, connections, relationships, it just opens doors. So
totally.
you're absolutely right when you talk about the fact like when we're thinking about our kiddos, like how do we set up these practices? Well, again, it's helping them think and see things with multiple what we call like different pathway thinking.
Mm,
So pathway thinking is like, if a little one says like, "Hey, I want to do this." It's like, "Okay, well, how many different ways can you think about making that happen?" Right? Like
mm.
instead of this linear trajectory where it's like A always equals B, it's like A plus 25 other letters of the alphabet.
So cool. And I think that that's so practical for kids as they grow up too,
Yeah.
because even, like, when I think back in my life, you're talking about my job as being, like, non-traditional. I think
Yeah.
back to my teacher being like, "So what are you gonna do when you grow up?"
Yeah.
In, like, grade 12 as we're going to
Yeah.
university, and me being like, giving an answer and him being like, "Oh, I don't really think that that's, like, a good idea." Like, "Then you'll be" I remember him saying like, "Oh, so you wanna be poor?" I told him I
Yeah.
wanted to be a social worker. I'll never forget this. And so but thinking like, "Oh, okay, do I have to change my mind? Is this not a possibility?" Like,
Yeah.
these things that I shouldn't be aspiring to be, and you really start to have doubt when somebody is doubting you.
Totally.
So, that is interesting to me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what makes me so nervous is there's this like misconception that we're like trying to get everyone to make it to university and have these traditional roles.
Yeah.
And the kind of the question I much prefer to ask, especially with my own kids and kids in my world, is like, what problems do you like to solve? Right? Like, what
Mm,
problems do you like to solve? And they'd be like, oh, I love to solve this problem. It's like, cool. Like, and what is a system or a practice or an opportunity for you to spend your time doing a lot of that?
I
And
love
so,
that.
so our daughter, for example, she's in second year. She was a former gymnast, former cheerleader. And the problem she really wanted to solve was like these recovery behaviors
Mm,
when, like, for example, if your season is really short and you get injured, like how do we get these athletes back into, back into their sport, back into it when the season's so short and recovery windows can be so long. So she was so interested around sports rehabilitation. So
Mm.
she's like, how do I get, like, I want to get athletes back in the game, right? I want to get them back quickly. So I was like, okay, so how do you do that? Where do you even start? What questions do you start to ask, right? And sure
Yeah.
enough, she realizes like the best route for her is kinesiology right now. Now, where she goes afterwards, there's lots of opportunities to think about different things. But again, it's what problems do you like to solve? Because the reality is we're always going to be facing problems. Like
Mhm.
it's inevitable in life that there will always be problems. And then you get older and you just get bigger problems, right? Like we're just
Totally.
always in this problem cycle because we're natural born problem solvers.
Mhm.
So the idea is when we think about futures or where we're going, it's like, what kind of problems do you want to solve? And how do you position yourself so you'll be well kind of resourced to figure it out?
I love that so much, and that's such
Yeah.
a good take home for parenting too,
Yeah.
and thinking about, like, especially people like my kids are young, but people
Yeah.
who are thinking like, "Oh, their kids are applying to university. What are they
Yeah.
gonna do?" That's
Yeah.
so true. I love that. I also feel that the world is quite heavy right now. There's lots of big
Very.
feelings. I'm often hearing from my community and my friends especially too, that things are just heavy and hard. So
Yeah.
for any listeners who are feeling maybe stuck or overwhelmed or like hope isn't actually really right there for them at this point in time, what's the
Yeah.
first step towards choosing hope again?
Yeah. So it's the first step. And first of all, I want to hold space that you're absolutely right. Like the
Mm,
world is so unwell. People are
totally,
feeling really wobbly, uncertainty, and it just feels like we're going to hell in a handbasket really fast.
totally.
And again, even with like screen times and this and that, like it just seems like as
Everything.
parents, we can't do anything right, right?
Yeah,
We're literally sending our kids to hell in a handbasket.
yeah.
Where we start is to see hope,
Mm,
which means that we want to be curators of hope filled stories. We want to make sure that, like, first thing when we start our day, we're focusing on things that are filling us up. We're focusing on
mhm.
things that bring us joy. So, the kind of the invitation is, not starting our day with like doom and gloom headlines or that feeling of scarcity. And we all know that.
Mhm.
But I think unless we set up practices where it like makes the alternative of picking up the phone and doom scrolling first thing in the morning with breakfast, like unless we have some really clear ideas, we're just going to default into that.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're setting some practices to see hope. So like where can we see hope right off the bat? Well, if you happen to, lived with your loved ones, it's like really show up for your kids in the morning. And I
Mm.
appreciate their busy mornings. Like I get it. Like I had 3, and, some of those mornings I would kind of do that oscillate between like at the beginning of the morning, Ariana, I sounded like I was Mary Poppins, where I'd be like, okay, everyone, gather together. And then by the end of breakfast, I was like Batman. I was like, get into the damn car.
Get out the
Right.
door.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was like I would like oscillate. Just depends on the moment, depends on the day.
Yeah.
But it's like enjoy, embrace the chaos, right?
Mhm.
Enjoy it as much as possible. It doesn't need to be perfect. Kids don't need a perfect parent. They just need a present parent. So
Totally.
just plug in, do that part really well, finding the
Mm.
parts that matter. And again, the reality for so many of us, we're having these lives that at one point or one season, we used to like pray for this. We used to wish for this. We used to work for this. And now we're in that messy middle
Yeah.
and we're just kind of run off our feet. Right. But if we
Totally.
can kind of pull back some of those expectations
Mm.
and just be excited and fall in love with your life, like your mornings. Like, again, I know they're hectic. I know they're chaotic. And I'm sure people are being like, Robin, you don't know what it's like to be in my house. Oh my gosh. Like, I remember one morning literally having to say to the boys, like, you're not allowed to tie your brother up under the table. Like, you're just like, that's a do not, right? We're not allowed to use scarves to like literally hog tie your brother under the table, right? So
Totally.
I was in it. And I think one of the lessons that I learned is that I was so hard on myself as a mom trying to do it all right
Mm.
and realizing it was so much easier when we embrace some of the chaos. We recognize that it is a season, it's a big season, and we just do the best we can. So we see
Totally.
hope first thing in the morning. And how we also can do it is also recognize where are some of your hope sources. So
Mm.
maybe you have like a bestie or you have something inspirational that like first thing in the morning, you're just like, hey, here we go again, right? You just have some type of a connection and
Mm.
then you go up and face the big, bold world.
I love that. I often find too, like when you say like find the joy in where you're at,
Yeah.
I try to just make like everyday moments very special. So like so silly, but like I'll add sprinkles on my kids' like
Yes.
smoothie, and it's
Yeah.
like the best day, that's like magical, then they're so
Yeah.
excited, and then I'm happy too. But,
Yes.
like, doing little things that don't really change that much, they don't really take that much effort, but they
Yeah.
are magical to your kids, then that, like, brings me joy, you know?
100%. And the little things aren't that little after all, right? Like
Yeah,
the little
true.
things are not that little. And I promise, like, it's not about what the bento box looks like, right? Like, it's
Correct.
not about any of those things. It's like literally just finding moments. And I call those precious moments, right? And
Mm.
my goal is to like collect precious moments with my
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
And what's amazing now is that they're 21, 19, and 17, and we still collect precious moments all
Oh,
the time. And
yeah,
again, it could be fun. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be like on a calendar and coordinated. Like
totally.
literally just kind of like making it up as you go along, but embracing it, being
Mhm.
okay with that. And I could share with you just briefly. I remember one time it was not a great morning in our house, and the kiddos were all little, and I was just like trying to get them out the door. We were on our way to school, and I was in that moment. I remember stopped at a light, like a traffic light, and I had these three little faces in the car seat. Still, one was looking forward, or sorry, two was looking forward, one was looking backwards, and I had this moment, Ariana, where I just felt like gross as a mom because how I just got my kids to that point was not my ideal way of being. Right, I
Mhm.
was rushing them, and I lost my cool, and I just felt so yucky. And in that moment, I recall this like big pickup truck pulled up beside us at the light. And there was this big golden retriever with his head out the back seat of the like quad cab, right? So this big dog is out the window. And I looked over and I said to the kids, I'm like, oh my goodness, thank God. And they're like, what is it, mom? I'm like, do you guys see the dog with his head out the window? And the kiddos were like, yeah. I'm like, that means it's going to be a good day from here on out. If you ever see a dog living his best life with his head out the window, it's a sign that it's going to be a really great day. And I was like, and the kids were like, oh my gosh. And so on our way to school, we would always see like and look for like a dog having his best life. Okay. So
Oh.
fast forward now, like 15 years. Hunter calls me up. He's in his second year of university. He calls me up and he's like, hey, mama, he goes, which one is the saint you pray to for impossible causes? And I was just like, oh, okay, well, it depends. Like, what's the degree of impossible, right? So we were going through the list of saints. And then he's like, yeah, he's like, I didn't study for this exam I'm driving to right now. And I was like, okay, dude, we'll talk about that after, but like, how do you need me to show up for you right now? He's just
Oh.
like, just knowing you're out there, mom, and you're praying for me, like that's the best I got today. I'm like, no problem, I got you. And anyway, I kid you not, he calls me after the exam, and he's like beaming. He's so excited. And I'm like, okay, so did it go okay? And I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, like this might have been a miracle. Like, what just happened here? He's like,
Yeah.
mom, as soon as I hung up the phone with you, I saw a dog with his head out the window. And I was
Oh
like,
my word.
okay. He's like, yeah. So I went into that exam. I knew it was going to go great because you always have a great day after you see a dog with his head out the window. And I was like, okay, that's not a study strategy, dude, for university. But I love the fact that he was feeling overwhelmed. He was felt that our relationship is one where he could reach out, right? Get a little bit of that mom comfort.
Yeah.
But those little silly practices, like again, you putting sprinkles on stuff in the
Yeah.
morning, like you never know the ripple effect of what
That's
that's going to do
so
for them
true.
when they're older.
I love that so much and that those special things can be carried on. We do some little, like, tradition things like
Yeah.
that on the daily usually, and I
Yeah.
really hope that it translates later
100%.
in life. So,
Yeah.
that's really encouraging and cool to hear.
Yes. Yeah. The
Um
little things aren't that little. Of
It's true. Yeah, I love that perspective. And I mean, as a parent, I always want to protect my kids. Like
course you
you
do.
said, obviously, like him
Yeah.
not studying as much for his exam. Like you just want to transfer that knowledge then, or like
Yeah.
make it all go away for them and
Yeah.
just feel better. Like I would take any amount of pain or
Of course
suffering
you
or
would.
hurt from my kids if I
Yeah.
could at all times.
Yes.
And we want to protect them from disappointment, from
Yeah.
feeling any negative feelings, but resilience is built through going through
Yes.
challenges. So how can we let our kids struggle but in
Yeah.
healthy ways
Yeah.
without feeling like we're failing as a parent?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think what's helpful is to discern between recognizing like risk versus danger.
Mm,
So, like, again, I think sometimes what happens is that, we want to, prevent our children from, having every kind of misfortune. But the
really.
reality is life is pretty risky, right?
Yeah.
Going into a new class, making a friend, being invited to a birthday party, like those are actually all risky things because
Mhm.
we are essentially turning our little ones out into the world. And there's a difference between danger, right? So
Yeah.
if a child is in danger, 100%, you jump in, you navigate it, you carry them and you lift them out. That's your responsibility as a mama to protect our children. What we want to think about when they're going into risky situations, we want to make sure that they feel well resourced in terms of knowing kind of like what the lay of the land looks like without overwhelming them, but
Mm,
also let them know that like you're their biggest supporter, right? Like I am here. Sometimes they'll be, a supporter versus that rescuer, right? And so helping them equip it. So for example, let's say they're trying something new and they're feeling really nervous. A lot of times we'll just be like, "Oh, we don't have to go." Right? Or this isn't the right time, or, "Oh, you didn't sleep very well last night." Well, no, kiddos have to figure out how to do things with broken sleep or when they're not
mhm.
feeling 100%, or better yet, when they just don't want to, because there's
Yeah.
some things that we actually have to do in life, even though we don't want to, like pay taxes, right? Like you name
Right.
it, right? There's just stuff we have to do that we don't like. So we
Yeah.
we don't want children to have this illusion that we will like make your life perfect. And then all of a sudden now you're 18 and you're like, good luck, have fun with that, right?
Yeah.
My obligation is done. So what we talk about there is that they know that they are well resourced within what's age appropriate. So it's
Mm,
like, hey, you know what? It's okay to go into a new situation and feel a little bit wobbly. You might feel that in your tummy, right? You might feel that like maybe all of a sudden you might just feel kind of scared. It's like, okay, so how do we hold those big feelings? Right.
mm,
And sometimes, using examples like, oh, this is going to be like feeling soup, right? You're going to be excited. You're going to be scared. You're going to have all these different things, but don't worry. It's in a little container. It's in a little bowl. So what could that look like? Right. Giving them visualizations, like not in terms of like affirmations, like I am a brave little boy facing my fears. Like they're not going to remember that, but
mhm,
they will remember like, okay, like I got all these feelings, feeling soup. I want to be a brave little person right now. So what do I have to tap into to make
mhm,
that more likely, right? So
mm,
facing the idea that I know you can figure this stuff out, but when it gets super scary and super hard, like I'll be in your corner. That doesn't mean I'm going to solve it, doesn't mean I'm going to take it away. And then we get to that place as they age. One of my favorite questions to ask, especially with our teenage daughter, was when she was in really big feelings. And usually, if you think about it right now, the resiliency that kids need the most is navigating feelings, right? Because
totally. Yeah.
feelings are the things that, as you know, they just like take over the frontal cortex. And we can have the sweetest little one who all of a sudden has a big blowout because of the
Yeah.
big feeling. So I remember with Ava specifically, when she was going through a big feeling, would say, Ava, right now, do you want comfort or solutions? Right?
Mm,
Do you want comfort or solutions? And sometimes she'd be like, no, just fix this. I need somebody to fix this. Be like, I got you. Right. Or no, I just need comfort. And I could give you another quick example. I remember one time Ava saying to me, she said, Mama, why do you show up so differently for my brothers than you do for me? Like,
interesting.
and I'm like, okay, Ava, tell me more. And she's like, when I'm upset, she's like, you don't go in for the hug, you don't joke around, you don't kind of not rough you up, but like the boys and I, we kind of get into it, right? And she's
Yeah.
like, but you just like literally give me this wide berth. And she's like, but when the boys are upset, she's like, you're like right there with them, like you're holding them, like you're with them. She's like, why do you treat us so different? And I said, well, Ava,
Interesting.
it's a great question. And I said, sister, when you're upset and you put on your headphones and your hoodie and you slam the door, you're not really sending the cues to me that you want to be held.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, but mom, that's when I need it the most.
Oh.
Right. So again, it's figuring out what works for that particular child, because even though you could have three, what they need is completely different. And the boys, when they had big feelings, they would express it, but they wouldn't shut down. But just
Mm,
how Ava navigated the world, she would. But I also think we teach our women, the young women, to do that, right? We're supposed
totally.
to kind of keep it all inside because that's what nice
Mhm.
girls do. And so it was just such a great learning for me that
Yeah.
sometimes we miss some of the things that matter most if we don't pause long enough to ask for clarification or for help understanding how they want to navigate this alongside us.
I love that so much because it was really interesting for me having twins, thinking like, "Oh, they're probably just gonna be the same," and
Weird.
then realizing, "Oh my gosh, no, they're like the complete opposite, and they need me to show up differently for them." They
Yeah.
both react to things differently, they both need me in different ways,
Yeah.
and so as a parent, I find that's almost been one of the hardest things for me is and coolest, like,
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
a negative thing, but just learning how to show up for each child differently and
Yes.
realizing which ways they accept love the best
Yeah,
or comfort or things like that, and what they like for quality time together is so different
absolutely.
too. So that's been a really interesting thing to notice, but to have her really communicate that to you is
Yeah.
so cool too, because like my kids are 4 and 3. They're
Yes.
not saying
They're
like, "Mom,
little.
I want
Yeah.
you to do this
Yeah.
always." They're usually showing me.
Yeah.
But it is really cool to me, I think, to be able to pick up on those things and to know. And now as an adult too, hearing that you say like, "Do you want comfort or solution?" I think is so interesting because I'm sure my mom, she's a listener, so she's going to
Hi.
probably like that I've said this.
Yes.
But often I've gotten upset when I'm calling her and I'm like upset about something and
Yeah.
she's like, "Well, have you tried this? Have you done this?" And I'm like, "I don't want you to fix my problems." And then I'll like hang up and be
Yeah.
upset. And instead, I've explained to her now, and we've had really good conversation on like, no, sometimes I just want you to listen to me.
Yeah.
Like I just need an outlet. I just need somebody
Yeah.
to talk to. I don't want you to fix my problem because I'm a problem solver myself. I've
Yes.
already tried all the things you're going to suggest to me
Yes.
a
Yes.
hundred times over, you know?
At least. Yes.
So, and for somebody else, they might not be that person who is acting in that way. Maybe they do want the solutions. They're calling to
Yeah.
get that information from their parent or from their friend or their support
Yeah.
person. But I just think it's real. That's a good thing to communicate and a good
Yeah.
conversation to have, whether it's a friend or a child or a parent
Yeah.
or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's helps so much when we're able to like have some of those conversations like before we're in the moment. Right. And like I remember when, when my husband and I got together, it was one of those things. And I have somebody who has very complicated ADHD. And I remember one time like he paused. He's like, "Hey Robbie, can you stop for a sec? Slow down." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can you actually help me understand how you got from that conversation we were just having to where we are in this moment? Can you like actually like connect the dots?" And I remember looking at him and being like, "Do you actually want me to tell you that?" Or like, and he's like, "No, no, I'm asking because I genuinely want to understand." And then I'm like, "Well, I thought about this, but that thought about that." And I like literally did this, like, it was like a, criminal minds master map of the fact that for me to get from A to B, I went on these 5 different side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, and then he was just like, "Okay." He's like, "That really helps me understand how I can show up for you." So he's like,
Oh.
so again, it's just it's asking the right questions
Uh-huh.
and having those conversations, not when, I'm in the middle of a tizzy. It was like I
That's
was I was
beautiful.
pretty chill, I was calm, I was just trying to kind of share a few kind of key things. And the fact that that was a moment when I wasn't really activated, I wasn't reactive. It was just like that was what he said was like this like window where he was like, "I want to understand this. I don't understand. I'm going to ask her then," versus, can you imagine, Ariana, if I was in a tizzy and then he'd be like, "How did you get there?" I'd be like, "Are
Are
you
you
kidding
kidding
me?"
me? Yeah.
Like literally, "Are you kidding me? This is when you want to know about like." Anyway, so I think our timing is really important
Huge. Yeah.
when we're expressing a need or when we are looking for understanding or insight. Timing is
Yeah.
really key.
Yeah, I think that's huge for sure. I want to talk a little bit about children and
Yeah,
setbacks
yeah,
because when there's things that happen at school, like a
yeah,
friendship issue, a loss, a
yeah,
mistake,
yeah,
they've messed up on something, what is the best way for parents to support that without just jumping in and fixing it? Because as a parent, often I just want to make it better.
yeah. So when your littles come home and they say, "I had the worst day of my life today. Like it was like the worst. Everyone was mean to me. Everybody hates me." My invitation in that moment is to say, "I believe you.
Mm,
Like, I believe the feeling." Now, you know very well that was not the worst day of their life. You know very well not everybody hates them. What happens in that moment, though, what the child needs is to know that they have an ally and that they're seen and that they're heard.
yes.
So it's like, "Yeah, you know what, Jax? I believe you. I bet that
Mm.
was really rough. I believe you." And as soon as we feel that we are seen and supported, what happens, it sends a cue up our polyvagal nerve that sends us the cue that we're safe.
Mm.
So as soon as somebody's like, "Hey, this is awful," and somebody's like, "Yeah, this is awful," it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm not the only one that has to try and figure it out." And then it just softens the edges of those big
Oh,
feelings.
yeah.
So whatever it is that they navigate and they come home and they're like, "Oh, I got a really bad mark on my test. I feel I'm so stupid." It's like, "Yeah, I believe that you feel that right now. And you know what? That's okay." And
Mm.
so we're not saying, "Yeah, you are stupid." Like we're not saying it is valid and reliable. What we're saying though is your experience right now is true. And I
Mhm.
see that as best as I can. I've never been in that position. So, or, like, again, we don't have to go deep with it, but it's just simply like, I believe you. And then
Yeah.
my next follow up question is there anything I can do that won't make this worse?
Mm.
And like, again, just when somebody's in a big feeling, a mood, I'll literally just say, what's one thing I can do that won't make this any worse?
Oh.
Versus what can I do to make you feel better? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in it. I'm like, when I'm in it, right? And there would be so many times where the pattern that we developed in our house was, hey, what can I do that won't make this worse? It's like, would cheese and crackers make this worse? Probably not. Cool. Let's have a snack. And I'll tell you,
Mm.
the majority of kids come home and melt down because they are so hungry and they're so dehydrated.
Yeah.
So before we get into, should I call a therapist? Does my child need a life coach? Like,
Yeah.
just do they need a snack? Right?
Yeah.
Like literally snack. And I could share with you one of my strategies I learned with my young children with this season. They all were really involved in a lot of extracurriculars. Like I have
Mm.
3 little sporters, and I realized that they would come home ravenous from school. And then literally we would jump in the car and we'd be going in 25 different directions. And
Yeah.
we would either have like, snack for dinner, dinner on the road, or eating at 9 o'clock at night. It was not
Yeah.
optimal for their biology. And I remember realizing it's just so much easier if I had like dinner, like all the pieces of dinner just as soon as they walked in the door. So it was like literally like sometimes it was 3:15. We would just have dinner at that time. And then we'd have snacks at nighttime when we were
Yeah.
done all of our activities. And again, those little pieces of making sure that their like biological needs were met actually
Mhm.
first, like made such a difference when they are navigating big feelings at school or out on the playground.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. I've found that lately too. Like we
Yeah.
do early dinner for that
Yeah.
reason. And I always have an after school snack available the second they
Yeah.
get through and the doors. And now they're like, ooh, what's for after school
Yeah.
snack? They're excited
Yeah.
and that's their time to chit chat and hang
Yeah.
out and talk. And I just think that is highly important because maybe they don't like their lunch or maybe they were distracted. Like a lot of
Yeah.
times, one of my kids is very social. He never eats his lunch because he's
Totally.
always chit chatting at lunch.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really important take home too.
Yeah. And the
I
gentle
also
invitation for mamas and families and supporters on that is like, it can be goldfish, it can be cheese strings.
literally,
It does not have to meet all of these like kind of what some of the pressure people put on themselves in
yeah,
terms of like creative snacks. It doesn't have like literally it can just be basics that I can share with you just briefly. The boys and I we were at a football game this past weekend in Kansas City, and they went into overtime, and we burst out laughing because the therapists on the field, they literally whipped out Rice Krispie squares, goldfish crackers, bananas, and Welch's fruit snacks. And Jax turned to me and he's like, Mom, I'm like, I see it. Like, literally, that was what I would like shove at them as soon as they walked in the door before
yes,
they could like kind of have that little crumble. And remember, they only crumble because they feel safe. And
yes,
they've been holding it together all day at school. But we had such this laugh that there they were, the Kansas City Chiefs eating their Welch's, eating their goldfish crackers, and their
love it.
and the Colts players with their bananas. So it doesn't have to be fancy, and your kids are going to be fine.
Yes, totally. I definitely think that's an important one because there's so much pressure to like bake everything from scratch and have these like elaborate meals. And it's like, no, no, no. Like
Mhm.
they're going to feel just as much connection by a pre made Rice Krispie Square or
100%.
goldfish. Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
On the other side too, I find that modeling behavior for my kids, it has been really helpful and
Yeah.
impactful, especially one in particular. He likes to see us doing things in order
Yes.
for him to do it or know that we're doing it with him.
Yeah.
So, how do we model hope as parents when we're having a really hard time ourselves?
I love this. So, how we talk about things in the future is extremely important.
Mm.
So, letting them know that we're getting our hopes up about things.
Hmm.
So, and again, a lot of times there's actually really interesting research that actually shows that children who are born to a parent with a visual impairment actually learn speech faster than
Huh.
children who are born with sighted parents or parent. And what the research explains, it's because a parent with a vision loss speaks a lot out loud what they are doing. So they telegraph what they are doing. They'd be like, hey, little baby, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to come over here and I'm now going to change you. I'm going to put you in your little romper. And they actually like telegraph what they're doing.
Mm.
And what that actually does is it introduces language so much sooner versus how, like, a sighted parent, we don't usually telegraph our lives to our children. So, if we take that kind of research foundation and be like, okay, if telegraphing is useful, we can do that in a similar way with how we talk about hope, right? So, even saying like, I hope tomorrow at school you have a moment that makes you smile. I'm hoping myself that I have a moment at work today that makes me smile. Doesn't mean I'm
Oh,
hoping for a full good day.
yeah.
Because golly, a day like that is so much pressure. Like the best way to get our kids older when they're older to like shut down is as soon as they walk in the door, we say like, "How was your day?" It's like, "Oh my gosh, that's so complicated." Like parts were good, parts weren't so good, right? But again, just forecasting a wee bit around, "Hey, I hope this happens today." And
Mm,
or I hope there's something that you can tell us at nighttime when we have like when I'm tucking you in or we're having supper where you can tell me about a bright spot in your day. Right?
mm,
So just even how we describe it and also letting ourselves get our hopes up, right? Like letting
totally.
ourselves dream big. And, again, really briefly, I could share with you there's a author, Dr. Peter Tia. He wrote the book Outlive. Okay.
Okay.
And it's all about longevity and like how we can live healthy and grow old really well. And anyway, so there was this one idea in his book that says that, and I appreciate that you have an amazing fitness experience and journey, which is so cool, by the way. And I can't
Thank
wait to
you.
talk to you about that on my podcast. But so anyway, I remember we always have like report back at supper time, right? And there's a rule in our house that nobody eats alone. So
Love
even
that.
if you come home at midnight because you just finished up your shift at Dawn's, somebody will sit with you when you have a meal because no one
Oh,
eats alone in our house. And we always kind of like pick up stories along the day that we want to share with whoever we have meal with later. And anyway, so I heard Peter Attia's talk about in his book. He said that if you can deadlift or you can carry in a farmer's hold 75% of your body weight as a woman, you will be at like 45. So I'm 46 now, but if you can do that at 45, at 90, you're going to be able to open jars. Right. So he's like, if you can farmer hold, you'll be able to open jars. And I was just
yeah.
like, that sounds awesome. So I ran down to our home gym and I'm like doing my farmer's carry with my, 3/4 of my body weight. And that night at dinner, I told the kids I was going to do it. And then at night dinner, I was like, oh, guys, I
I
did it.
saw
I'm going to
it.
be
Yeah.
able to open jars. I'm so excited. I have such a hopeful outlook. And I remember Jack started to laugh and I'm like, why are you laughing? He's like, Mama, you can't even open jars now. And I'm like, that's not the point, buddy. Right. So again, it's just putting this idea about our futures and
Mm,
our futures being really bright. And it's not that we are discounting there's going to be hard parts.
mhm.
It's like we are just constantly in this place of imagining this evolution, this kind of creativity of what's possible. And I think that's a beautiful way to model hope for our little ones.
I love that so, so much, and I've seen a video actually about that farmer's carry thing. My friend Renee, who I
Yes,
work out with
yes.
a lot, she
Yeah.
told me about this, and she's like, "I'm gonna try it," and
Yeah.
she was so hopeful too, like, that's very, very cool. I watched
Yeah.
this happen for her.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
absolutely. Yeah, and if she gets to the part where she has to do, like, the dead hang, and we're supposed to be able to do that, like, ridiculous for, like, 2 minutes, I was so relieved when one of my besties who's a sports physiologist, I'm like, "Is the research solid on this one with the dead hang for 2 minutes?" And he was like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, good," because
And a
that
dead
is
hang
just
is so hard.
ridiculous, ridiculous. So don't worry about that one, but the farmer carry hold, that apparently has lots of good research that backs it up.
That's so interesting to me. We did, dead hangs yesterday in my workout, and I had never done it before, and,
Awful.
like, my forearms
Yeah.
are so it was crazy.
Yeah, it's
Very hard.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not grip strength, you're absolutely right, it's forearm strength, and
Yeah.
many of us, yeah, we don't have
It
that
was
yet.
crazy. What is maybe one myth about resilience that you wish parents would let go of?
What a great question. What's one myth about resiliency that I wish parents would let go of? I would probably say the idea of grit.
Mm,
And I appreciate the book on grit. I appreciate she's an amazing scholar. I think what happened was there was a very successful TED Talk that went out in the world, and it sent this message that we just have to be like grittier, and it's a mindset. The reality, resiliency is a whole body experience, right?
mm,
So, for example, I know that if I haven't had a good night's sleep, if I'm underfed, if I haven't had real connection, I know that I'm not going to have very nice thoughts, right? I
mm.
don't trust anything I think after 8 p.m., right? Like that's just a
Yeah.
rule in practice because the more I've extended myself during the day, the
Mhm.
less resourced I am to have good thoughts and think positively and hold hope. So I think one of the big misconceptions is that this is all about grit. I think there is a place for like being able to stick with something
Yeah.
but not at the cost of our well-being,
Mm.
not at the cost of our wellness.
Yeah, I love that. Because you're right. Like there's a fine line between having resiliency and
Yeah.
just, toughen through, like do
Yeah.
everything like no pain, no gain. Like
Yeah.
how often was that,
Yeah,
put
totally.
into my mind? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is a very fine line.
Yeah.
But I think the way that you said it, like if it's impacting your well-being,
Yeah.
then that's the problem.
Yeah. So for example, I remember when my kiddos were going through a tricky season and they would be like, I would just see them first thing in the morning and be like, you don't have it in it today to go to school, do you? And they're like, no.
Mm,
I'm like, all right, we need a day. Right. We're gonna call it, because I think a mental health day is as important as a sick day. And if we can
totally.
do it in the place of prevention and minimizing the blast radius.
Mm,
So, you know what, some days, like, if they didn't have it in them to like be able to knock out a full day of school, especially if they were navigating something that was tricky, it's not that I would, it wasn't like, okay, well, you'll never have to go to school again. And now I'll
mm,
homeschool you. And it's like, no, it means like sometimes you just might not feel very resourced. And that
mm.
threshold, the more we can get in tuned with it, it's like, okay, if I just take one day proactively, that's going to save like 3 or 4 days post, right?
Totally.
So just that idea of recognizing when we need some relief and some
Mm.
ease, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of staying engaged. That's part of staying in that place of high performance.
I love that. I think that's very, very important. Well, I think there have been so many take home messages in this episode. This has been so wonderful. I usually end with some rapid fire
Bring
questions.
it. I'm so
Super fun.
excited.
Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Your go to coffee order.
Oh, it's a tall latte with an extra shot.
Ooh, love.
Yeah.
Dream travel destination.
Home is always home.
Oh, never
Always.
heard somebody say that. I love that. Your favorite TV show or movie?
So this is fun. I don't actually like watch a lot of television, and but I would say like one of my favorites was from like so long ago, and it was actually Prison Break. And
Love.
that's my like go back to every once in a while when I need to have full escapism. As
I
I
call that a comfort
literally,
show.
it's a comfort show. So yeah, I'd say like it's funny because people are like, seriously, Prison Break, Rob? I'm like, oh yeah, like I could just. It's like I know the season when I'm like, I need to do this for the next 4 weeks of my life.
I love that so much. And if you could have anything for dinner tonight, what would it be?
Mac and cheese.
Oh, buddy, I love that.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? Where can they connect with you and stay updated with your book release and all your work?
Oh, thank you. So drrobyn.ca is the easiest way, or on social, anything out there. Again, I welcome conversations to continue. And I just appreciate the bright spot that you are in so many of our days. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh,
Every time I see you come across my feed, I always smile. So I love that. Like that's my like response when I see you, is that like,
oh,
this is going to be fun. It's going to be real. It's going to be funny and lighthearted, but also useful. So thank you for doing the good work that you do.
thank you. That's like the best compliment in the world. Thank you so much. And thanks for all of your insight and expertise today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Cup of Joy. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you've been loving this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you are listening. Your support helps the podcast grow, it helps it reach more people, and it means the absolute world to me. So keep filling your cup with joy, and I will see you next week.